All right, go ahead.
Just give me just a moment to call the meeting to order and I will introduce you and then we'll get going. So welcome everybody to our board meeting. Thanks for joining us. Sorry that we're a bit late. That is entirely my fault as chair, not doing good meeting management of our previous meeting. So I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement that we are on the homelands of the Lekwungen speaking people here in Victoria and Esquimalt. The homelands of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and just always want to begin with a recognition of their homelands and the work that we do together, building relationship. We have an agenda here this evening, and the first thing I need is a motion to approve the agenda. So thank you, Patty. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Doug. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the agenda? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Our first order of business this evening is Restorative Justice is here to make their annual presentation to hear about all the great work that they're doing with VicPD and in our community. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jillian Lindquist. And again, apologies for keeping you waiting and thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for doing that important land acknowledgement to get us going. I'm just going to share my screen. I put together a PowerPoint, which I always do. It helps me stay on track with where I'm going. Where is my, oh, here we go, slideshow.
Can everyone just, before you go ahead, whoever's controlling the Zoom, can someone click got it so the big box goes out of the middle of the screen? Okay, go ahead, Jillian.
Okay, thank you. All right, so yeah, as was mentioned, my name is Jillian Lindquist. I'm the Executive Director of Restorative Justice Victoria, and I'm here to report to you on the work we've been doing with the Victoria Police over the calendar year 2020, which in many ways feels like a lifetime ago. So many folks will be familiar with our organization, but I just wanted to start by doing a quick overview of our organization. So we were established in 2002 as a not-for-profit society and charity. We've been working with VicPD since 2005. We did a pilot from 2005 to 2006 to receive referrals and then signed an MOU with VicPD in 2006 and have been working with the department ever since. We are a small team, although we have quite a number of volunteers working with us. We have 5 staff and around 60 volunteers. Around 25 of those are caseworkers. So they're folks from the community, mainly professionals that we recruit and train to support in our direct client services. We work with youth and adult victims and offenders, and unlike many RJ programs throughout the province, we actually have the capacity to deal with minor and serious crimes. We receive approximately 75 to 150 referrals per year, coming from Victoria Police, Oak Bay Police, Crown Probation, schools, victims and offenders who self-refer, and the general community. But the vast majority of our referrals come from the criminal justice system, and historically, the vast majority of those have come from the Victoria Police, and our services are free to the public. So this was in the materials that were presented to the board previously in the package. So I don't want to spend too much time here, but I will just quickly say that in 2020, we received 59 referrals to our organization. That was quite a low number. That's unusual, but due to the pandemic and everything that happened throughout 2020, we did notice a decrease in referrals, and 50% of those came from the Victoria Police Department, and others came from other areas of the criminal justice system in the community. In terms of the offenses that were referred to us by the Victoria Police Department, about 25% of them were related to theft, theft under, and then there was a variety of other offenses, including assault, various forms of mischief, fraud, break and enter, uttering threats, assaulting a police officer, extortion, assault with a weapon, taking an auto without consent, assault causing bodily harm, and mischief over 5,000. And 4 of the referrals that are included in here were more serious crimes in which the Victoria Police member doing the investigation made the wise decision to recommend the file be sent to restorative justice by the Crown within their RCC. So it could come to us under a specific piece of legislation called alternative measures, which is what we ask members to do in those cases. So just briefly around case outcomes. So just under 70% of the referrals that were sent to our organization in restorative justice proceeded to a restorative justice process, and 90% of them have been successfully completed. Two of the files are ongoing for very unique reasons that I won't go into. They're long in the tooth for sure. In two files, the offender did not fully complete their agreement, so they got right to the end and completed almost everything, and then there were a couple of things that they didn't finish. So we don't mark those as being fully completed. And in one file, we did lose contact with the offender within the restorative justice process, which does happen from time to time, especially in some of our cases where the lives of our clients are incredibly complex. In terms of why files didn't proceed, so sometimes either it might be a member of the public or a file is referred to us by the criminal justice system. Sometimes these things might come to our organization, but we're not able to proceed to a restorative justice process. And in 2020, the reasons for that were oftentimes it was because we couldn't reach the offender, or when we did, they actually didn't consent to the restorative justice process. In 4 cases, the referral source requested that the file be sent back due to changing circumstances or new information. In 3 cases, we worked with members of the public who really wanted a restorative justice process, and we supported them in looking into that, but unfortunately, we weren't able to proceed for different reasons. In 2 cases, we screened the case out. We didn't feel like it was appropriate for restorative justice. And in 1 case, the victim did not consent. So those are some of the circumstances why a file might come to us, but we don't actually proceed with restorative justice process. So in terms of outcomes of the 90% of the cases that have finished completely, these are some of the common agreement outcomes that we saw in 2020. So agreements are the things that the offender and the victim, if they're participating, and others who've been involved in the offense or the harm, come to agreement on around what the offender will do to make things right in the best way that they can, and also to address the reasons or the circumstances around why the offense happened in the first place. So these are the common things we saw in 2020. We had a lot of financial restitution to victims. Actually, in 2020, we facilitated over $25,000 worth of restitution to victims of crime in our processes. A lot of the offenders that we work with, and we support victims with this as well, we support them in accessing counseling. We facilitated conducting volunteer work in the community or donating to community organizations. And typically this happens when, for example, there might be a cause that's important to the victim. We see this a lot in cases of gendered violence or gendered harms, where the victim might want, for example, the offender to do something to contribute to women serving organizations in the community. Or sometimes it might be something related to the offense, where the offender might give back to an organization or make a donation to a related charity. We facilitate a lot of letters of apology. It's really common, even when victims meet with their offender in the restorative justice process, just having that formal letter later on that acknowledges their accountability and their insight and what they've learned and their regret and remorse for what they've done is really important to victims. And sometimes that can include gifts, things that offenders have made themselves, or other gifts that are meaningful for them to give to the victim. We facilitate connection to addiction supports and rehabilitation programs, and also work with offenders around how to monitor and reduce their substance use when it's related to the offense. Researching and discussing impacts of specific harms. We support offenders in creating plans for budgeting, communication, boundaries, and self-care. We've noticed over the last couple of years that we're dealing with a lot more cases of violence. I'm not going to go into the reasons why that might be right now, but as a result of that, a lot of our agreements have aspects of violence prevention, nonviolent communication skills, and anger management. Offenders doing self-reflection writing and self-development reading, and then really working to prioritize and access supports around mental health, physical health, and identifying other support systems in their lives. So I just wanted to give you a couple of examples. Those are very broad sort of areas that we might work on. So when we develop an agreement, the agreements always contain multiple terms. It's really common for there to be anywhere from 4 to 8 terms of things that the offender is going to do in the community. So I just wanted to give you a couple of examples. So a man who damaged another driver's car after a road rage incident completed a residential treatment program to address trauma and addiction challenges that were really a central factor in how he reacted that day. A man who impersonated a police officer wrote letters of apology to Vic PD personnel who were affected. A woman who committed fraud at her place of employment after experiencing a financial crisis engaged in credit counseling to manage her enormous debt. And a woman who committed multiple assaults, or sorry, a man who committed multiple assaults related to parking and other driving related conflicts completed a 6-week program in nonviolent communication and de-escalation. So those are just some examples of clients in 2020 and some of the outcomes. So in terms of client feedback, we have a 3-point evaluation system at our organization. We really value evaluation. We want to know, you might think you're doing a great job, but your clients, you do need to hear from your clients and hear their feedback and experiences. And we do really value the feedback of our clients, and we do use that feedback also to improve our services, and have done that for many years. So for 2020, which is very typical, the victims who went through the restorative justice process were very satisfied and would recommend restorative justice to others. And I put in here just a few quotes from victims. I won't read them out, but as you'll see, victims are saying that they're finding the process gives them closure to traumatic events and gives them the opportunity to speak to the other person involved. A victim in one was saying that they really valued the way that the restorative justice personnel interacted with the offender, holding them accountable, but in a respectful way. Another victim found the meeting with the offender extremely helpful, that everybody was willing to hear him out and understand what he'd experienced. And another victim said it was just very positive, and they found that the team, the people working with them, really worked hard to address needs, culture, and personalities in order to facilitate a calm environment, which isn't what you necessarily think of when a victim is sitting down to meet with somebody who's harmed them. So that would be a real win for us. So in terms of the offenders that we worked with, very similar, experiencing a lot of positivity and satisfaction around the process and feeling like they would recommend it to others in a similar experience. And so similar to victims, offenders were talking about the value of the process. One is saying here that they were living really in a state of trauma and experiencing a lot of fight or flight and making some bad decisions, and the process allowed them to learn to understand the world differently and make different choices and re-engage in life. Another offender just said that it was very positive, had a positive impact on their life, and was helping them with their recovery. Another offender said the process was healing, and they saw restorative justice as great progress for society as a whole to have this option available in the community. And another offender said they were completely satisfied that it changed their life, that something positive came out of doing something bad. And this is a very common sentiment that we hear from our clients. I wanted to highlight here, what's on the screen is just a snapshot of a newspaper article. So this didn't happen in 2020, but I thought I would highlight it here since we're all together. This is in relation to a referral that was sent to us by the Victoria Police Department in 2021. And the outcome of that case was really, really positive, and so positive that the victims and the person responsible for the offense wanted to speak to the media about it. And the offense actually made the front page of the Globe and Mail, the national newspaper. And I was at an event with Deputy Laidman, and there was a member, it was a provincial event. There was a member there from the Provincial Hate Crime Committee. I think it's called a committee. And he just noted that this case and this newspaper article had come to their attention, and they really felt it was a national example of what's possible with restorative justice, in particular as it relates to hate crimes. They thought it was a really wonderful example. And I wanted to highlight that here because this file never would have come to us if it wasn't for Robert Horn and members of the department having confidence and faith in our organization and belief in restorative justice. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the work that we're currently doing at VicPD. So as I mentioned in my written materials, we have noticed a decrease in referrals coming from the department. They've been going down for the last 3 years. And I want to say that's certainly not as a result of a lack of effort or buy-in or support from senior leadership. But we are thinking about creative and creative ways that we can increase the use of restorative justice and really have it, I guess, sort of spread out within the department in various areas and have a multi-pronged approach. And we're doing some really interesting and creative things that I wanted to highlight here. There's a lot, so I acknowledge this is quite the list. One of the things that we're working on is a shoplifting pilot, which would allow loss prevention officers in stores to refer files directly to restorative justice. They would still come through the police department, but it would be a good way for these files to come to us, and also hopefully to increase reporting of these offenses. We're talking about having watch champions within the watches who are sort of identified as folks in the watches who can help promote and support referrals. I am currently working with Sergeant Nikki Scher to pilot the jail sergeant doing file review and recommending restorative justice to the members of her watch. We have trained all of the record staff and also the quality review staff to review files with an eye to whether or not the file would be appropriate for restorative justice and making that recommendation to members. And that's something that we worked quite heavily on in 2021. And I just want to acknowledge Darlene Perry for all of her support and efforts around that. Of course, we're doing watch briefings, and I'm really working on improved communication with, in particular with the sergeants on watches. For example, if we have a really great case, a really great success story, making sure that the sergeant is aware of that so they can share that with their watch and really acknowledge the member who's made that referral. We're doing enhanced recruit training. So instead of doing 45 minutes, we're doing 2 hours, and I'm working with Colin Watson to hopefully enhance the training at the JI that members receiving restorative justice, and also doing more RJ stuff in the Block 2 with the new recruits. And this year we updated the policy and procedures for the internal Vic PD policy procedures related to restorative justice. So all of these things I think are going to make a really significant difference, and we're really grateful to the department for that support. So yeah, just in terms of thank yous, I do want to acknowledge, as I said in my materials, Deputy Laidman, who's been a really strong supporter and coming up with very creative ideas for how we can improve the use of restorative justice at the department. And of course, Sergeant Sean Millard, who continues to be our police liaison officer, and Darlene Perry, I also wanted to acknowledge for the work we've been doing. And then of course, all the members and other staff and personnel at Vic PD that continue to support the use of restorative justice. And that's it. I know I wanted to keep it to hopefully to 15 minutes, so I'm just going to stop my share, and I certainly would love to answer any questions or speak about the work we're doing if that would be helpful at all.
Great. Thank you so much, Jillian. As always, your work is incredible, and really appreciate you coming to share it with us. Any questions from the board? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Thank you for the presentations. Enlightening. The question I've got, your caseworkers are volunteers, is that correct?
Some of them. We have staff and volunteers.
And what is the typical qualification or experience of a caseworker?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for our staff, we have three staff who are caseworkers. One is a clinical counselor. The other one is has a PhD in psychology and is a prof at UVic. And the third one actually works mainly in the area of gendered violence, also works at BSAC and has done a lot of work in sexualized violence and restorative justice and transformative justice in the community. And then as it relates to our volunteers, we typically only recruit professionals just because of the type of work that we do. So a lot of them have counseling backgrounds or mediation backgrounds or social work backgrounds. Some have legal backgrounds. And we also do and have increasingly been trying to focus also on folks with lived experience and of diverse identities. So they're a wide range of people, and we deal with a wide range of cases. So we deal with some pretty minor stuff, and of course we deal with some pretty serious stuff. So we do select the people who are going to be working on each case based on the level of experience and qualifications and backgrounds that we think would be relevant to that case.
Thanks, Jillian. Just one question on my end. When you showed kind of all of the people or reasons that the cases weren't completed or whatever, on the page 5 of 139, it says there are 59 referrals in 2020, including 30 from Vic PD. Are those 59 referrals that have been completed, or are those kind of reasons for not completing subtracted from the 59?
They're subtracted from the 59.
Okay, so of the 59, and I couldn't calculate the number from your bar graph. Of the 59, how many?
Oh my gosh, I should know this off the top of my head. I have many pieces of paper with numbers on them. Just give me a second. I believe it was, where's that one?
Like 10 or 12 if you add up all the bars, maybe a couple more than that.
Yeah, so let's see. So 22 didn't proceed.
Okay, so 59 referrals and 22 didn't proceed. And again, we don't need to get into this in the meeting, but maybe it's worth, and again, I won't ask because you might not have the details specifically of the Vic PD referrals, but I just want to make sure that we're referring cases that are likely to be successful or likely to proceed. So I know we never know for all sorts of reasons, but if there's any hints that you have for our officers or the other referring agencies about referring, where there's more chance of completion, or maybe that's just how it goes and there's not, I'm not sure. It seemed like a lot of not completes, and maybe there's reasons for that. And maybe, I don't know if this is different than this year than other years or not.
Yeah, I think usually around every year that we operate, there's usually about 20% of the referrals that come to us don't proceed for some reason. We do have to do an intake and assessment process when the files are referred to us. So, there's various reasons why a file might be screened out, or people don't consent, or other things might be at play where it doesn't move forward. And that's normal. That's a normal part of the process. So I don't think this year was too much different. I think when I did the numbers, I believe it was around, I have to look back at the screen again, but it was just under 70% of the file. I think it was 68% of the files proceeded. So, or 69% of the files proceeded. And I would say that's a little bit low, and COVID-19 and other factors might be a bit at play with that. One of the other things that have changed is that we've started to track inquiries. So we do get a lot of, especially as restorative justice becomes more known within the community, we are getting more cases where members of the public are reaching out to us seeking a restorative justice process, and we work with them to see if that would be possible. And those can take quite a lot of resources. So we started to track those, and sometimes they don't proceed. So that will add to that number as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that
You're
answer.
welcome.
I think we'll leave it there. So thanks for joining us. Of course, you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, but don't feel obligated. And just thanks to you and your team for all your really good work in the community. It's impressive.
Thank you. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
The next item of business are minutes from the meeting of September 21st, a motion to adopt the minutes. Thanks, Paul, seconded by Sean. Any corrections to the minutes? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Chief, why don't you walk us through your monthly activity report and update, as well as the equity, diversity, and inclusion engagement update, and then we will we'll ask questions on both of those at the same time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Chair. So I'm just going to be on page 13 of 139, and I'll start with my community activity report. Just wanted to highlight a number of things that I've attended. I'll start off with on September 29th. I was a panelist on the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion in Police training session at the Canadian Police College Network. And I was privileged to be a part of the panel for that. We had 5 recruits graduate from the Police Academy on November the 5th. I presented on November the 8th, I presented the Q3 Community Safety Report Card to Esquimalt Council. And last week at Remembrance Day, I attended our Hall of Honor and laid a wreath here in Victoria, and then attended the Esquimalt ceremony and marched with our officers and laid a wreath with Inspector Mike Brown. On an operational front, I just wanted to highlight our officers continue to be busy working the front lines and doing excellent work. And I wanted to just highlight the report that you may have seen just a couple weeks ago, but it's worth highlighting again here in the public session, was where there was an individual that was on a spree committing a number of robberies. And in fact, he had committed 10 robberies in 8 days, mainly at convenience stores across the region in Victoria, Esquimalt, Saanich, and Oak Bay. And his last one, where he was spotted by an officer, somebody who matched the description, was when he entered a gas station in Saanich's jurisdiction on Gorge Road West. And the officer cued in that this may be a potential suspect that we had been looking for these robberies. And moments later, when the man fled, he had just committed his another robbery. And we were able to use our integrated canine service, and the individual was arrested as he was attempting to hide in a nearby vehicle. But I just thought that was worth mentioning. I'll move straight from there to my equity, diversity, inclusion, and engagement. Again, I'll just do the written portion first. That continues to be on the bottom of page 13 of the package. So as we all know, that September 30th was the first day for the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And I attended the event that the City of Victoria hosted at Centennial Square, and was proud to be a part of that. And then also participated at Protocol Corner to welcome Indigenous youth that were paddlers that were arriving by canoe, with Councillor Alto performing the ceremonial duties at Protocol Corner. I've attended twice now, once on October the 6th and once on November the 3rd, as a virtual presenter for Songhees Nation Chief and Council. And the purpose of our meeting with Songhees Nation and Council was to really talk about VicPD's development of our Indigenous engagement strategy. And we're doing a lot of work in this area. Now, I know the board is well aware of this. We've been doing work in this area for over a year now. And it's taken a little longer, but we're making sure that it's meaningful work that is guided by our Indigenous communities and by elders and youth. And we want to make sure that we roll out the plan, and I'll certainly be bringing to the board that is reflective of what our Indigenous communities want to see from the VicPD. And we think that that's going to hold a lot more strength than presenting something that we think we would like to do, but perhaps it's not guided to the type of work that our Indigenous communities would like to see from us. So it was a really good meeting. We're also we talked a little bit about not only the work that we're doing, but our different engagement opportunities, the work that I'm doing with the Aboriginal Coalition Against Homelessness and the Indigenous Tweet family, and that work that continues to make significant inroads with our Indigenous communities, and also sharing with Songhees Nation and Council the fact that we have a number of Indigenous officers that have created their own group, and they did it for two reasons. One, internally, they want to celebrate their culture, and they want to share with other officers and staff some of their traditions and culture and whatnot to kind of make our organization more inclusive. But also what they want to do is they wanted to have a platform where they can actually engage with Indigenous communities, and being Indigenous officers feel that would bridge the gap and provide a little bit more of a coordinated approach to what VicPD is doing when we do our community engagement. Both were well received. Attended the Aboriginal Coalition and Homelessness Project kickoff. So we're partnering with the Aboriginal Coalition and Fran and her team to pilot a project that is looking at gender-based violence. And so this is specific to Indigenous communities. And we've got some opportunities here that we can kind of partner with them on, provide them with expertise, learn from them at the same time as having better levels of engagement. And so we're just literally walking down that path and starting our journey with the coalition on that front. I attended the webinar, Belonging in Victoria, Muslim Voices for Change. And Mayor Helps, I know that you're a part of it, and a number of board members, I think Board Member Schachter and a number of other board members were a part of that. I attended that. I attended the Victoria Police Diversity Advisory Committee engagement session that was held at the Sikh Temple on October 28th. So that was the last session. So a number of chiefs were invited. I think it was session 5 of 5. And so the chiefs were invited to the final one where community members could talk directly to police chiefs and police leaders and ask us, what are we doing and what they wanted to tell us face to face instead of it being included in a report, and what areas they felt that police leaders needed to focus on in our region. So I found it actually to be quite inspiring, and it was a really good dialogue and discussion at the Sikh temple. That's the update that I have, but actually before I conclude, I'm just going to turn it over to Deputy Chief Watson. As the board is well aware, we have a 10-point action plan on respectful workplace, and there's a couple areas that Deputy Watson would like to provide you with an update on.
Perfect, thanks, Chief. I just have 3 very brief updates on the work in this space. The first one is just an update. I mentioned to the board before that we're working with a master's student on identifying practical approaches to how best to attract applicants to VicPD from a variety of diverse communities. We had a meeting this morning. The work is underway, and some of the preliminary results are quite interesting and exciting. So that work will continue in the coming weeks. I think the goal is the conclusion of the project in about 8 weeks or so, but we'll have to see how that goes depending on a number of factors. Second thing is we made a commitment about updating the competency framework with respect to both hiring and promotion at VicPD. So I made mention, I think, to the board previously that the competency profile for recruit constables that's used by the Justice Institute was updated in part with input from us. So we've gone ahead, worked backwards from that, and updated the competency profile at all ranks for VicPD, which includes the 2 new competencies. Well, they're new for the Justice Institute at a recruit constable level, but not necessarily new for higher ranks in the organization. But nonetheless, equity, diversity, inclusion, and conflict management were the 2 main ones that were added. And so those competency profiles have been updated and they'll be shared with staff this month. And the last one is we continue to work on departmental policies related to both respectful workplace and things like equity, diversity, inclusion in the organization. We've been working on a draft update to the promotion policy that looks at some of these aspects, and we actually met with the union earlier today for some input on some of those aspects. We met with the union, but we have some more follow-up to do with them for some input from their points of view. So work continues, and we'll continue to make forward progress.
That's great. Thank you very much to both you and the chief for reporting out. Yeah, Chief, go ahead.
Sure. Sorry, Chair. I just had one more thing. I wanted to just share with the public the initiative that we have where the Victoria Police Department, through support of our police board, is proceeding with offering $20,000 incentive to police officers to come to the Victoria Police Department. And I wanted to just let you know that we came out with our announcement a week ago, and it's really been successful. We're seeing a number of individuals, number of police officers across Canada, locally here in the South Island, across the province, and also all the way across Canada, that have reached out to us with their resumes, or they're asking questions, seeking more information before they apply. I wanted to just reiterate that this is only for a limited time. It's for the next 12 experienced officers to get us through their staffing shortages that we are experiencing on the front lines. And we'll certainly revisit this initiative after that. I was going to show you the video. It's about 2 minutes, 47 seconds. We're just having some technical difficulties. So for those members of the public that want to see the video that we put together, the tagline is, the job you love, the life you want. And it really just talks a little bit about the work-life balance, about not just being a police officer, because policing can be quite similar across the country, but the work-life balance that you would get, the work, the lifestyle, and the family-oriented work that you would be able to establish here in Victoria is much different than it is in many parts of the country. So I wanted to just encourage everyone to go to our website, which is joinvicpd.ca. And when you go to joinvicpd.ca, there's 1 or 2 tabs that you just have to enter for experienced officers, and you'll see the link to the YouTube video. Thank you for the update.
That's great, Chief. Thank you for the update, and thanks to you for all your work, both in the general sense and also it's great to hear. I mean, the board set a priority in our strategic plan for equity, diversity, and inclusion and making meaningful change. And it sounds like at the organizational and operational level that's really happening, and these public updates are really helpful. Did the board members have any questions for the chief on any of his updates? Okay, we'll move on then to committee reports. I don't know that there are motions. There's mostly just things here for information. So Charla, HR committee, what would you like to highlight? And I know we're going to have Deputy Chief Watson walk through the Who is Vic PD.
Definitely. So I think on our items discussed, we have the training and de-escalation techniques, which is important, and it just highlights one of the many training opportunities that individuals here at Vic PD take every year, as well as we have a tentative municipal appointee from City of Victoria that we are waiting for the province to approve and eagerly waiting to welcome them to our board. And I'm going to pass it over to Colin Watson to talk about our demographic study.
And for members of the public, the PowerPoint or the presentation is on page 17, and we're going to ask Colette to just pull it up. I think it's just, Colin is not going to speak to every single slide, but just to highlight some of the key demographics here that we found in our own police department.
Terrific, thanks, Chair. So the Who is Vic PD report is the result of a request from the board for information around the composition of Vic PD in terms of Black, Indigenous, people of color, and women measures within Vic PD. So I think we had reported previously to the board that we don't have a reliable database for this information. So we embarked on a bit of a process to try to figure out what's the best, most respectful way to go about collecting this information. So we worked within the organization and did some work to determine that really the most respectful and best way forward at this point was to approach this by polling all of our staff, reserves, volunteers, both sworn and civilian staff members, in terms of this information. And we went one step further because we thought what was really important as well is to really get a good idea and recognize not only sort of demographic indicators, but also some other things that we think would be really interesting to the public and interesting to us. So for instance, as you take a look at the report, we asked all people associated with Vic PD for things like disclosure around their professional designations, what type of work experience or what type of professional backgrounds they have prior to coming to Vic PD in whatever capacity they serve us. And I'll just pause there to say that we felt quite strongly as a group of staff members that whether you're a police officer, a reserve, a volunteer, everyone here is working towards the same goal, and that's providing good quality service to the communities. And so that's why we took the approach that we did. We also looked at hobbies and interests. We looked at languages spoken by our staff. And then we tried to, on page 23, tried to show a comparison of Vic PD as a reflection of our communities as a whole with respect to working age folks in our community. We recognize that creates one large group of individuals, and that there would probably be interest in breaking out that data a little bit further by both sworn police officers in the organization, civilian staff, reserve constables, volunteers, and so on. So on the last page of the report, those numbers are broken down. I'll point out that this is a completely voluntary survey, and all of the questions that were asked of staff, it was completely voluntary about which questions you asked, how much you completed, how much information you disclosed, although obviously we encouraged people to disclose as much as they were comfortable. Overall, we had 298 responses out of a total population group of about 470. So we felt that was a really overall a decent response rate. But I just want to point out a few limitations on this, and that is that get down on my checklist here so I don't forget anything. So we are a little bit concerned about the extent to which we can rely on the result as a very accurate representation of the actual numbers within our organization. And the reason I say that is, so for instance, when you take a look at the number of folks in our organization, associated with our organization that identify as Indigenous. The number I think is 9. But then when I look through other work that we're doing in the organization, I know that we have a number of folks in our organization that identify as either Indigenous or Métis, to at least 14. So I only make mention of that because it's just one indicator of some discrepancy between the voluntary survey data and the actual most accurate numbers within Vic PD. So the obvious question is how best do we continue to work in this space to be able to provide accurate numbers, both within Vic PD and for sharing with the public. We are in the process of implementing a new human resources information system, and that's software to track our any number of human resource functions within Vic PD. One of the things that we hope to be able to do with the introduction of that system is to encourage folks to disclose this information, to be tracked and being able to report on an ongoing basis through that system. I suspect that we'll probably have a good high participation rate. And over time, the quality of the information and the size of our database will grow over time. And that'll continue to be helpful for us, both again, in terms of reporting to the public and in terms of assessing how we are doing in terms of recruitment and retention, promotion, advancement, and a number of other things. So the work continues. I've been told a number of times that this work is a journey, not a destination, and I'm coming to learn that even more and more. So we'll continue to work on that and try to improve how we approach that.
Thanks very much for that presentation. Are there any questions? Anything that anyone wants to highlight? Yeah, Charlie, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for this. I really appreciate the PowerPoint. And the one thing that I think this really does is it humanizes everybody here in the department and lets us know that I really appreciated the portion of what did you do before you were here at Vic PD and seeing the different occupations. And yeah, I just think it was really great as an anonymous way for us to get to know the team here better and understand what makes this such a fantastic team.
Thank you. Yes, Sean, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I would echo what Carlos said. Thank you very much for the team presenting this information. I was very impressed with the some of the volunteer work, the impression tribute to the community in their personal time. And there's no secret, of course, that the coaching sports was really high up on that. Given the fact now the information presented to me that the number of our officers come from a very strong professional sports background, high level Olympics, CrossFit, even NHL lacrosse, so it's really nice to see that both, in addition to the work they do, which is quite demanding, quite taxing, as we know, but they're finding the time in their own very personal time, which is quite coveted, to give back to the community, particularly to youth and people in other sporting communities. I thought it was really impressive to show and to show that it humanizes our diversity of our workforce. It also shows that as much as the officers take in, they have the capacity to give back to the community. And that was really nice. I think it's really nice in the presentation.
Thank you. And may I just comment on it? Thank you for that observation, because I think it's one of those things that can get lost very quickly when we're having conversations about, the police department, police officers that, at the core, all of our folks, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, parents. And it's always remarkable to me about the amount of time, energy, and effort outside of policing that people put in their community. So thank you for noticing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you. For me, the numbers are interesting and appreciated. The part that's most compelling are the areas for further exploration. I think these are really, really thoughtful questions. And so I guess my question is, I know we can't do all of these at once, but for example, does Vic PD leverage the extensive volunteer experience that our people bring to work? Or does Vic PD do enough to support those among us who have caregiving responsibilities? Or does Vic PD support its people in attaining and maintaining their important designations? And questions about, do we support various sexual orientations? Anyway, the questions are really thoughtful. So I guess my question about the questions is what's next, and how do we kind of not lose some of the really great work? Not that it would be lost, but what are the next steps with the blue boxes, I guess? For sure.
Yeah, and those questions were meant to be less literal and more sort of, pondering further conversation about where we go. I mean, as everyone on the board here knows, we're very much in a place where collecting additional information, trying to build off of some of the work in the past. There's been good work in the past, and and whatnot, but we'd like to continue to make some continuous progress. So the way I envision this is with some of the other work that's being done, the results of these questions themselves can help inform a broader discussion with a refreshed diversity committee about where do we want to focus next, those things that are of highest priority, with things where we can make, it's approaching any sort of journey or project, finding that balance between taking on the big projects and the big initiatives, but at the same time looking for opportunities to make subtle improvements in the places that do have a meaningful impact on people. So it's taking all of those pieces together and trying to figure out how do we enhance our plan for next steps, and then start working diligently towards that. That's kind of how I envision it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I'm a very literal person, so I'm like, okay, what's the answer to question A? But I think these questions as kind of guides or reminders for the diversity committee, and to me, it's really well done, and it asks all of us, including the board members, to think about these things. So it's very thought provoking. Yeah, Doug, go ahead.
Thank you. Our chair's comment about the blue boxes reminded me of a question I do have. It relates to that. First off, I'm assuming that this demographic survey has been shared with all the membership staff.
Yes, it has. Yeah.
I'm thinking too that the blue boxes, the discussions are things to ponder about, are probably, hopefully, active conversations among the staff, whether it's facilitated by yourselves or whatever, but that's really where it should be engaged. It's not leadership, not from top down, but from bottom up. That's my thoughts.
It's a great point, Doug. Great. Okay, thank you. And for members of the public, really do encourage you to read through the report that's there. It's really illuminating, and I think shows some of the shows who our people are at Vic PD, but also some of the things we're thinking of to make sure our officers are well supported while they're out there working hard. Next committee is governance. And Sean, anything to highlight for the public from your committee meeting?
Great, thank you, Chair. For the sake of time, I'll just highlight a couple items. One item on the agenda there, sorry, discussed it, is board content. So the board had a discussion about whether the members of the board should have their individual email addresses posted. We came to a consensus conclusion with that to have one single actually that board at victv.ca. So members of the public wish to ever engage the board, any questions, concerns, what have you, please use that email address, and then the appropriate will be connecting with you and go forward. And I'll also mention item H, which is the COVID vaccine status. As you know, it was announced on November 15th, all VIC staff, including officers, supply staff, and municipal council volunteers want to submit for vaccination. I also want members of the public know that also includes board members as well. So we've also been asked to provide information, and very confident that our department will have a very high number of folks who are indeed vaccinated. Just a reminder to the public that last year when many of us were waiting to get our first dose, it was many first responders and police, fire, and ambulance that were wanting to get the vaccine early for themselves and help obviously protect themselves, because they were in the community working hard and keeping us safe. So I have every confidence and belief that our department will be quite protected. And I know we have measures in place as well to continue to protect staff, of course, and of course the public. So those are really a couple of the highlights there, Mayor, Chair, and the rest of the items are personal. Well, maybe item C, sorry, is a lot of what we were training for the board. Actually, that's very key. So I want to thank the Mayor for inviting members of the board and the members of the department for the presentation last month that he highlighted things. There's a inclusion report. The result of that is that the board will be receiving some training for some of those folks and early new year. And then we also requested that the folks that provide training to the board give a public presentation. So members of the public can also hear some information in more intensive form, but also get a sense of what we learned as well. So I'm actually looking forward to that. But again, thank you to the Mayor for sort of spearheading that and allowing us members of the board to be there. It's very important and time of conversation.
Thanks. And yeah, just to also on letter C, that we're going to have some training as a board, but our idea that we discussed at governance was also to make sure that at public sessions, we have kind of a roll up from the trainer about some of the things we've learned, so that there's opportunity, not just for the public to know what we're getting trained on, but kind of high level opportunity for the public to learn as well. Finance, Doug, there's a whole bunch of stuff here for us.
Thank you, Chair. There's two items that I'm bringing to the board's attention from the Finance Committee. The first, of course, is the October 27th, approximately 10 months of financial report prepared by Steve Kirkholm, our controller. And the second item that we're reporting out is the first time we're reporting out the overtime report. Report to the board committee periodically, and I would suggest that any of the board members have questions that Steve Kirkholm's online here, so he'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the monthly financial reports are there and speak for themselves, but since this is the first time that we've done an in-depth overtime report, Steve, just for the public's benefit, can you just highlight some of the findings in your report? And it's on for the public on page 59.
Sure, yeah. So as Doug mentioned there, this is a new report that we're going to be bringing regularly to the Finance Committee. So this one brings us to the end of October, which is 80% the way through the payroll year. Slightly over budget in terms of overtime at 82.6%. That is offset by being under budget in salaries. Broadly in the report, we've broken it down into administration, operations, and integrated units. Just so you can see where the different drivers in the overtime are coming from. Admin is slightly over budget, although relatively small in terms of dollars. Most of these, the large ones you'll see here in records is actually offset by salaries just because of some gapping in our hiring. Other areas you'll see there are some overages that are reflections of some of the deadlines that we have, particularly in community engagement, freedom of information. Those are areas that we have addressed in the 2022 budget. Operations is another area where you'll see overtime is driven largely by patrol and other frontline services. They're actually providing service support to patrol. So we're actually seeing some overages in beat and bike, for example, community resource officers where their services are required more and more to deal with some of the situations with the shelters. And then thirdly, the last area where we're seeing overages is in the integrated units, particularly the Greater Victoria Emergency Response Team. We did expect this. These call outs have been increasing over time to deal with high-risk situations in our jurisdiction. That also has been addressed in the 2022 budget. We're also seeing obviously some call outs for the public safety unit to deal with protests and demonstrations that are both resource intensive in terms of both deployment and planning. And I'll just leave it there if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. We move on now to board co-chairs update. I don't believe that we have a report. Nothing to say except that we're here and we're working together. BC Association of Police Board Directors update. So Charlotte, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. So thank you. So I have some updates that are exciting. We are having our BCAPB board meeting this Friday, and we have been working to develop a draft outline for a new series of awards. So our board hasn't passed this, but we are going to be discussing this at our meeting. The draft has already been sent to the BC Association of Chiefs of Police here, as well as BC Police Services. And at BCAPB, one of our goals is to help support our officers and recognize good work in the community, which is again another goal that our board here for Victoria Esquimalt Police Board is. And so the three awards that we'll be discussing have been sort of brainstormed by our membership. And the first one is a community-driven recognition award, which is community members would nominate officers. We have a supporting our governance award where the police boards of the different municipalities could give an award to a department member or staff who've been supporting the board and helping us do our work, as well as a Excellence in Innovation Award, which would also be given by the police board to innovative programs within the departments. And the concept of this is BCAPB will create a package with awards, certificates, press release, and then we will give these packages to each of the municipal police boards, who can then utilize these in the way that they see fit. So this is something that I'm hoping we have support from our membership to move forward, and a great way to help BCAPB reach its goals, the municipal police boards to reach their goals, and for us to acknowledge and emphasize some of the great work that's happening across our province in police departments. Also, BCAPB is hosting, we have two, I think we're calling them fireside chats. One is on Thursday, November 25th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. We've invited all municipal police boards, including chairs, so it doesn't just have to be the BCAPB reps. And we've had members come forward asking questions about negotiating police chief contracts or performance reviews. So we're gonna have an open Zoom where anyone that has a question is welcome to join, and anyone who has negotiated police chief contracts or performance reviews will also be there. And it will be an unstructured conversation of people bringing their questions forward and people who are able to share their expertise. We're having another one on December 9th on a Thursday from 6:30 to 7:30. And this one has also been a topic picked by our membership, which is regarding budgeting and working with councils. So again, we have invited all of the police board members as well as chairs. And these are a couple things that we're working on. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks for all your work as president. You really kind of moved in and they're shaking things up over there. So that's positive to hear these programs coming forward. Are there any questions for Charlotte?
Are you inviting any municipal council or mayors or anything? Well, I guess the mayors are all the chairs.
I think the mayors are, and I feel like if council members wanted to attend, I'm not sure, but bring forward ideas, mayors, and let me know what your thoughts are.
We have council meetings on those 2 nights, so hopefully Barb can attend.
I am attending.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
I'm attending too.
The next opportunity, or next item rather, is board member engagement. And this is just an opportunity for any board member who's done any work in the last month in terms of community engagement or anything to report, connections with the community. Again, this is a pre-COVID thing where we were all going to lots of things and now we might not be so much, but still want to make sure this opportunity is here in case anyone has anything to report. Okay. Next is just here for our information, the 2021 to 2022 strategic priorities. Again, for the public, these are here on page 64. And we do quarterly reports to assess ourselves against our priorities. And I believe the next quarterly report will be in January. Colette, is that correct?
Yeah, we'll just be finalizing the schedules, reporting schedules at an upcoming meeting.
Okay, so the last ones, which were the first ones, were very, very useful, and thanks to the committee chairs for taking the time to do that. Again, the framework agreement is just here for us in case anyone wants to raise anything with respect to the framework agreement. So anyone? Okay. And then next is the draft board meeting schedule for 2022. And that's on page 66. I think given that it's an election year, the joint board council meeting for the budget would be in November rather than October. October 18th is only 3 days after the election, and neither of the councils will even be sworn in yet or the results confirmed. So Colette or anyone else thoughts on that? I think that's what we did generally last time. So
Yeah, we can easily amend that date.
okay, any other questions or thoughts on the board meeting schedule and committee meeting schedule for 2022? Okay, so we need a motion to confirm the schedule with the October date moved to the second Tuesday in November. Moved by Doug, is there a seconder? Seconded by Patty. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. On the next page is the Human Resources Report. This is to show the movement in and out of the department for various reasons and also promotions within the department. Inspector McCray, is there anything that you wanted to comment on here?
No, it's very what I would call mundane, nothing to particularly to highlight. You will notice some retirement notices. This is normal for us this time of year going into the early part of the next year.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, this is here for transparency so people can see the movement in and out. And then all of the other items here are correspondence for information only. I did ask the staff if they could just, because it's an item of high public interest, without going into the very lengthy report from David Lucadelis, on page 69 begins that lengthy report. And maybe just highlight for the board and the public what implications this has for Vic PD. So Deputy Chief Watson, is that over to you?
Why don't I start, Deputy?
Okay, Chief, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this was a complaint that was brought forward. It was lodged by the BC Civil Liberties and by the Union of BC Indian Chiefs against the Vancouver Police Department and their conduct regarding street checks, and that they were done in a discriminatory manner. So this came as a service or policy complaint. The board looked at it, the Vancouver Police Board looked at it. They referred the complaint to be investigated by the department. The department produced a report with a number of recommendations. The board also committed at that time to hire an external contractor to do an independent review of this particular complaint. And so what ended up happening, and the Director of Police Services then commissioned this report that's in the package here, is there was a number of deficiencies in this report, and the selection of the contractor, there was some conflict of interest and whatnot. So really what this is, the information was sent to all the boards, was what sort of guidance should police boards be given from police services when they are tasked with complaints that are service or policy complaints, where perhaps the board may be considering an independent consultant, and where's the guidance and direction given to boards, right? Because you want to set the police boards up with success. And so this kind of has led to a bigger discussion after this report came out, and some of the recommendations coming from the report is how can government better support the boards. In it, if you look on page 69 of 139, is basically a 1.5 pager summary of some of those recommendations that were directed at the Vancouver Police Board. And I won't list them, but they're in paragraph 3 on page 69 that just really summarize some of the areas of focus that police boards need to have. In addition to that, the ministry is going to be conducting a review, so more of a compliance review on street checks. And so they're just putting their heads together as to what that's going to look like. There'll be some sort of an audit function, there'll be some interviews, and so this is kind of and as you know, the police services came out with their provincial policing standards back, I believe, in 2019 that were implemented in 2020. So there'll be some additional follow-up work that's done, but really this is just to guide police boards in how they are looking at complex service or policy complaints and how they can better manage them. So Deputy, did I miss anything, and you want to highlight anything I missed?
That's pretty much it, Chief. I'm hoping that this review process will be helpful to sort of clarify some what I describe as challenging aspects to the current standards, particularly in context with the unbiased policing standards that have recently been released by the province. And some other limitations around the existing databases and whatnot. So we'll just see where it goes with the province.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Any questions on that? Okay, seeing none, and then the final thing I'll call out before I ask for a motion to adjourn is just wanting to recognize on page 138 the list of commendations that our officers have received. As we all know, our officers are out there on the front lines working in really challenging circumstances, sometimes playing shorthanded and working very hard nonetheless. And the commendations reflect the public appreciation for the work of the officers, and they're rolled up there for the public to see and for the board to recognize. And so that is not something I wanted to go without mention. And with that, I believe the next thing we need is a motion to adjourn the meeting. Would someone like to move that motion? Thank you, Charlotte, seconded by Michaela. Is there any discussion? Okay, thank you to the members of the public for joining us this evening. And again, if you see the board at vicpd.ca, if you have any questions, we are happy to answer them. Or if there's anything you learned tonight that you'd like to discuss with us, please email as well. And you can always come and address our meetings. Maybe we'll see someone from the public come to one of our meetings and share your thoughts with us. But for now, all those in favor of receiving or adjourning, did I ask that already? No. Any opposed? Okay, none opposed. I'm a stickler for not speaking after motions have passed, so I just want